Warning, the following contains nothing but spoilers for Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. When Miles Edgeworth was young, he was always ready to lend a helping hand to those in need, until the day his father was murdered. As he grew up, Miles became a ruthless prosecutor who got a guilty verdict in every single case. That is, until he was defeated by his former friend Phoenix Wright.
Objection!
Distraught, Miles started to question himself, and in the following case, he sacrificed an easy victory in order to help Phoenix uncover the truth. Then, on Christmas Day, Miles finds himself accused of a crime, and he begrudgingly lets Phoenix defend him in court. The story is told across 4 different cases. Each one has its own narrative, but it's the final case that ties all the events together into a dramatic story about trust and redemption. Now, before I talk about the game, I have to provide a bit of context. Japanese courts currently have a conviction rate of over 99%, higher than any country in the world. This is because prosecutors will only bring to trial the guiltiest of cases, but there are many controversies surrounding forged confessions and shady prosecutor dealings. Now, I know very little about the topic, and if you'd like to know more, I'll provide some links in the description, but I bring it up because, aside from spirit mediums and cross-examining the parrot, this game is closer to reality than you might expect. The egotistical prosecutors, the incompetent police, and the gullible judges are each parodies of their real-life counterparts. The biggest difference is, Phoenix Wright has won more cases in this game than most Japanese defense attorneys have in their entire career. This is a satire, and it works because you're playing as the only sane man in a world of ridiculous characters. But even though he plays the perpetual underdog, this is not the story of Phoenix Wright. Sure, he gains experience as a lawyer, but his character arc pales in comparison to that of his foil, Miles Edgeworth. From the beginning to the end, Phoenix stays mostly the same, an empathetic person who places unreasonable amounts of trust in others. His skill at bluffing and finding contradictions improve, but he always manages to get his client innocent, even in the face of airtight evidence. This game does not challenge his beliefs or explore the consequences of his attitude. Instead, this game is about showing Miles Edgeworth's development from a distrustful perfectionist to a truth-seeking rationalist. This is important because if you look at video games as a whole, it's clear that the vast majority assume that the story must be centered around the playable character. The problem is, it's really hard to develop this character in the narrative without taking control away from the player. This is why games will often have the player temporarily control a second protagonist, or have several protagonists, or even none at all. Those approaches do have their merits, but I think playing as someone who has a strong influence on the main character works especially well in the context of a video game. After playing as Phoenix Wright, we feel responsible for changing Miles Edgeworth, and it's no surprise he's one of the most popular characters in the series. We learn about each character and major plot points mostly through dialogue sequences. In fact, this game puts a lot of faith in the likability of its characters, and so it's a good thing that nobody in the Ace Attorney universe is just a bellboy or just a photographer. They each have specific traits and mannerisms, such as Wendy Oldbag, who rambles so fast the text doesn't even let you hit the next button. These endearing traits are also complemented with some very realistic character flaws that make the whole cast appear remarkably human. For example, during the last case, Phoenix's assistant Maya feels useless and believes that they'd all be better off if she wasn't involved. Why? Because she doesn't know anything about the law and feels completely out of her element. Is she correct in feeling this way? Of course not! Her impulsive actions ended up saving Edgeworth twice, but she's young, insecure, and tends to blame herself when things go wrong. Fortunately, she's also proactive, and decides to return to her village at the end of the game and work on her spiritual training. In fact, by the end of the game, we have a strong sense of who each character is as well as how they feel about one another. While dialogue-heavy investigation sequences can get very tedious, it's all worth it when court is in session. These outlandish courtroom dramas are by far the best part of the game. They take away the exploration aspect and challenge you, the player, to put the pieces of the puzzle together. The music also does a great job of setting the tone, with 2 different questioning soundtracks to reflect the rising tension and the cornered theme for the most dramatic moments. There's also a simple but effective audio cue for the player. If the music stops when you present evidence, that means you got it right. The experience is very engaging and you feel personally responsible for solving the crime. The anime style also works to great effect here. Emotional states are massively exaggerated and characters react physically to simply being proven wrong. Objection! Flies back and forth between the prosecution and the defense until the true villain breaks down and confesses on the witness stand. Although it set the standard for what would follow, this game has largely been outdone by its successors. Specifically, Case 1 is extremely short and generic. It mostly exists to introduce the game mechanics, as well as Phoenix's mentor Mia Fey before she gets the axe in Case 2. Now, the second case also does a good job of introducing key characters, but that's all it really has going for it. The villain is particularly dull, and by the end, Phoenix doesn't even get to solve the case. And then there's the classic problem of adventure games requiring outlandish moon logic in order to proceed. The Ace Attorney series are no exception, and in this game, the player is expected to present a vital piece of evidence to the killer, and this goes about as well as you would expect. The following moment is supposed to be dramatic, but I just can't take it seriously. Even if Phoenix is the kind of person who puts unreasonable amounts of trust in the wrong people, it doesn't make sense for the player to have to go through the motions. Fortunately, the later games address these problems with varying degrees of success. Overall, once you get through the less interesting first act, this is one of the best stories ever played. Miles Edgeworth is such a strong character, and his chemistry with Phoenix in the courtroom is some of the best in the whole series. But this story is only the beginning, as Phoenix Wright is determined to provide justice for all. And that's all for my analysis. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.